Live from Town Square Towers at the heart of the Jersey Shore. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Get up, get out, do something. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Good morning and welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I am Phil Brilliant, substituting for Jeremy this week. It is Monday, November 7th. It is 7:10 a.m. It's still chilly outside. The high today will be 53, sunny, clear, a good day to get up, get out, and do something. Remember, you can always join the conversation at 732-505-1160. And I am joined in studio, and I will apologize in advance because even though he just told me 3 times how to say his name, I'm probably going to butcher it. But I'm joined by Fran Racioppi.
You got it.
I got it. Look at that. He is a former Army captain, I believe served 3 tours of duty in Iraq.
That's correct.
And I invited him in here this morning. Truth be told, I heard him at a Boy Scout event a couple of weeks ago where it was a shooting event where we were shooting these clay plates that went up in the air. And just so you know, no clay plates were hurt while I was shooting. You know, they all stayed intact because I couldn't hit the tree in front of me if I had to. But I got to meet Fran, got to hear his story as he really talked about leadership in the Army, and I was totally impressed and said, I got to get you down here. And I appreciate you coming down from New York today and spending some time with us. So good morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Phil. I appreciate you having me down.
You know, so tell us a little bit about this path. So, you know, Boston University, you grew up in Massachusetts, and then somehow you end up in the Army.
Yeah, so I graduated in Boston University in 2003. So 9/11 happened right going into my junior year. And I'll tell you up front, I'm not a 9/11 guy. And when I say 9/11 guy, what I mean is when I saw 9/11 happen, there's a lot of people who during that period of time saw it and they had a call to go serve the country and they joined the military and they served honorably. I looked at that event and I said, I'm going to go report on this because I was a journalism major. And I had just started a lot of the broadcast journalism classes. And I said, wow, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to go be a war reporter. And so for the next 2 years, that's what I focused on. And as I came up towards the end of my senior year and really started looking at going into journalism, I had been reading books and covering the war really from the academic perspective in school. And I started to see these guys with long hair and beards riding horses and really making a difference in Afghanistan and then out in Iraq. And I said to myself, I can go do that and really make a difference versus reporting on it. And if I want to go report on it, maybe I can always do that later. So when I graduated, I had applied to officer candidate school. I'd been accepted. And in October of 2003, I went off to basic training and ended up becoming branch and infantry officer. Spent a couple years in the infantry, deployed to a year for Iraq during that time. Came back and then said, you know, this has been an amazing experience. I loved being a platoon leader where I was in charge of 41 infantrymen. And I said, but I think I need to go chase those guys with the beards and the long hair and, you know, ride some horses and really do something. And I put in my application to go to Special Forces. I was selected. I went to the 3-week selection course, made it through that, and then went to the about 15 months of training at the Special Forces qualification course and made it through, and then was sent out to 10 Special Forces Group at Fort Carson, Colorado.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you spent how long out there?
I spent as a Green Beret from 2009 until this last January.
Wow.
So in total, 2003 until January 2016.
So like 13 years of your life spent protecting this country.
Yes.
And serving for this country. So first of all, thank you very much. You know, I think that is amazing. And I think your decision path, I mean, most people, again, I have 3 daughters. My youngest is a freshman in college. I can tell you the last thing she's going to do when she steps foot out of, graduation is say, I'm going to go join the Army, and I'm going to go, do something that big. I'm hoping she does big things, but, joining the Army and giving up 13 years, basically protecting this country in parts of the world you didn't know where you were going to go.
I'll tell you, time flies.
Yeah.
And when I look back, my mom actually lives right in the vicinity of Boston University. and I go back there to visit, and I see her regularly, and I feel like it was just yesterday that I was there, and I was back there a couple weeks ago for the Head of the Charles, which one of the larger rowing races in the world, because I was on the rowing team at Boston University. And I often look around and I feel like I'm one of those kids that's still walking around. And then I realize that they're looking at me, and I realize that they're looking at me kind of weird. And then I think, well, wait, I'm the old guy standing over here in the midst of all these kids.
And by the way, at 49 years old, I still walk into a college bar and I think I'm one of those kids. And then I look around and I go, no, I'm not. I quickly realize that they are kids and I am the old man on campus now. But you're still the young man. But, so you were on crew, rowing in college. So physical fitness was part of your life. I saw you played football in high school. Compare that to what you experienced in the Army.
I think that athletics in general, especially athletics as a younger person, and whether that be, starting in elementary school, but really especially when you start to understand what you're doing and what you're gaining in athletics at the high school and the collegiate level, ingrains in you a sense of duty and a sense of discipline and really a sense of the leadership. And when those are lessons that you learn as a young person that you take forward into the rest of your life. And so, for instance, at BU and on the rowing team, and those people who understand the sport and participate in the sport know that as the day goes on, the wind picks up, so you can't row on the river. So you row in the mornings. And a lot of times, especially now, you row and it's cold and it's dark, and half of your practice may be in the dark. And at the college level, it's a very interesting experience because you're going to practice every day at 5 or 5:30 in the morning until 7:30, and then you're going to go to class all day, and then you're going to come back and you're going to practice again in the afternoon, and whether that be on the water or in the weight room, you're going to do something in the afternoon. And so you're bookending your academic stuff. But when you go to and you wake up as a college student at 5 in the morning and you get on your bicycle and you ride, to the boathouse, you're driving by other students who are still coming home from the night before most of the time. Or, they're sleeping and everything's dark, and yet here you are with this sense of discipline and this duty and this teamwork and this camaraderie that's built, and you're putting it to use every single day in a competitive environment, in a sport, and no matter what sport you do, especially in team sports, the team is only as strong as the individual. So you have to be the best you can individually to make the team better. And that's what you learn through those experiences. Right.
So we need to go to break, but I want to take that and how that taught you leadership roles, because I know you didn't become a captain overnight in the Army. So let's take what you took out of college and everything you learned relative to becoming a leader into being a captain. We'll be back in a moment.
Wake up with Jeremy Grunin wherever you go. Download the Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.
Good morning. Welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. This is Phil Brilliant, and we're continuing our conversation with Fran Racioppi, who is, former Army captain. And when we went to break, and incredible story of kind of dedication and leadership that you were talking about, but on the college days. Now you turned that around and became a captain in the Army. Not something that happened overnight.
No, it was a lot. I think for me, I'm trying to think now. I became a captain in 2007. So 2003 to 2007, you go through your lieutenant time. That was my time in the infantry, and then in training to be a Green Beret and join the Special Forces. And then in 2007 was when I was promoted to captain, and then completed the training for Special Forces and went off and became a detachment commander for a Special Forces team, where I was in charge of 12 special operators.
Yeah, and you tell the story. You're captain. You're in charge of a brigade. I'm not a military guy, so I'm going to butcher all the terms. You're in charge of a team, and you walk into the room the first day. Okay, and you tell the story 2 different times that this happens to you, and the comparison of the two. So tell me that real quick again.
I do. So in 2 of my positions, slightly the same but different. First I was when I was a lieutenant, I was an infantry officer in charge of 41 infantrymen, and when I transitioned over to Special Forces, I became a detachment commander in charge of 12 Special Forces guys. And when I walked into my platoon as a platoon leader, I walked in having gone through about 18 months of training where I had gone and learned how to be an infantry officer, learned how to be an officer in general. I had gone to Ranger School. I had gone to Airborne School. I had gone to some specialized courses. And when I walked in that room, I really thought that I was the man, right. That I was untouchable, and that everybody in there was going to instantly respect me because I was the one who was now going to be their leader. And what I realized when I walked in that room and kind of nobody looked at me for a few seconds, and I stood there, my chest held high, and I looked around, and what I realized was that, everybody sitting in this room was a lot more experienced and better trained than I was at that point in time, because that was a room of infantrymen who had been to Iraq, some had been to Iraq and Afghanistan at this point in 2005, and here I was, fresh out of school, the green face, and it didn't matter what I thought, because what mattered was that I was going to be there to be a part of these guys' team and to help this platoon become better, or I was going to be a hindrance to them as they prepared and trained to go forth, into another tour into Iraq, and that I had to be a part of that team, and I had to learn from them. And I wasn't there to just simply be in charge. It was there to help that team become better. So when I went forward, and I kind of had the similar situation when I took over my Special Forces team several years later. Before I walked in that door that first day, I put my hand on the handle, and I stopped myself, and I remembered back, and I said, right. When I walk in here, I think I should probably maybe put a smile on my face and walk in and see what happens. And I was so thankful that I did, because when I walked in that room and I was introduced to the different, I'll call them characters, but they're some of my best friends in the world that I trust more than anyone. When I walked in, they introduced themselves, and the guy, his name was Rudy, who was my team sergeant, asked me how long I'd been in the Army, and I said, well, I've been in the Army 5 years. He looked at me and laughed and said, well, I've been in 10 Special Forces Group for 20. Yeah. And I realized right then and there it was a good idea that I did put a smile on my face, and I didn't think that I knew anything when I walked in that door, because I had a lot to learn.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Again, that stuck with me. Basically, you learn from each time as to how to address it. So, of course, now we're going to go to our news break on the bottom of the hour. When we come back, I want to talk about that experience in Iraq that really taught you, that really was a culmination of all your leadership and talking, and then talk to your life as a veteran and give out that very special birthday wish to a 7-year-old. And we'll be back in a moment.
The news never stops at WOBMAM.com. Get the latest from WOBM News, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Live from the Jersey Shore to the world. Get up, get out, do something. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Take the show wherever you go. Download the free Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Good morning. Welcome back to Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. I am Phil Brilliant in for Jeremy this week. It is 7:35, Monday, November 7th. It'll be about 53 degrees today. It'll be a nice day to get up, get out, and do something. And again, as I said, I am joined this morning by Fran Racioppi, a former Army captain. I got his name perfectly right. And here's somebody who definitely got up, got out, and did something for 13 years as a member of our armed forces in the Army. He told a story when I heard him speak. I asked him to give the shortest version in his life he'll ever give of that story when he was a captain in Iraq. So give us the short version.
Okay.
I know it's tough.
No, it's easy. So, my first deployment to Iraq, I spent a year there as an infantry platoon leader, and we were told that we had deployed to the worst area of Iraq, and it turned out being a pretty bad place. But we got there, and for the first couple of months, nothing happened. And here I had gone through this, at that point, 2 years of training, 18 months at Fort Benning, Georgia, and then another, 4 or 5 months in Fort Carson training as a unit getting ready to deploy. And when we deployed, all I wanted as this young, fiery-eyed lieutenant was to get in a gunfight and, get out there and get as many of the terrorists as we could. And for 2 or 3 months, nothing happened. And it became frustrating. And I would go and I would talk to my platoon sergeant, my senior enlisted counterpart in the platoon, and I would vent these frustrations to him. And he had been in the infantry for 20 years at that point, and he would sit back and laugh, and he'd say, it's going to be fine. Just stay prepared, keep yourself ready. We got to keep the men ready. We got to train in our off time. We can't get complacent. We got to be ready to get after the enemy when the enemy comes and decides to get after us. And I would look at him and I'd say, well, you were in the Gulf War. You already had your chance, and then I'd storm off and go back to my room and be frustrated. And a couple of months, about 3 months or so into this deployment, we're in an intersection one morning doing a security operation, and I find myself in a gunfight. In a multi-way gunfight from a few different directions. And I remember being absolutely terrified for those first couple of moments and trying to just process what was going on and what was I ever thinking, wanting for 1 second.
This is where I wanted to be.
Yeah, exactly. And questioning, why did I want to get in a gunfight and why did I ever even come in the Army? I mean, this is crazy. And then, after those couple of seconds of inaction and that, that paralysis by fear, realizing that this is okay because I'm trained for this. And, as that kind of set in, and, I speak like as, what felt like, minutes and minutes, probably a few seconds, but as that mindset transitioned into, I know how to deal with this, then the calming kind of sense came over because there was this discipline that I had to prepare through training and through exactly what my platoon sergeant had said was to not be complacent and train in the off time and be ready for this exact moment in time that then led to action and allowed myself to do my small role as my platoon combated this enemy.
Yeah. And again, I remember that day, and of course the story is it's about 25, 30 minute, 40 minute story about how it goes on to going after the bad guys after that. But I think the other thing too is you kind of said that everything you had learned, everything that had prepared you for that day, your leadership role, just, seconds after the fear left your body, in your mind, it was like, this is what I have to do. This is what I'm trained for. And I think a lot of times that's life. Whatever we do, let it be family life, work life, we were talking a little bit offline, military was your job, that we take everything we have, we put it together and we pinch it into action. And that's what you did. Now, 13 years in the military, January comes, you make a decision, to step aside. How's that transition?
I'll tell you that transition is longer than I thought it would be. And I think, as I've met more and more veterans throughout the community, that's kind of the resonating thought process of everybody. And I think that when you go through the transition process and you're getting ready to get out, they show you the videos, you read the books, and
are they still VHS videos?
Yeah, no, I think we've actually put them online now.
Okay.
But you look at it and you say, well, that's not going to be me. I'm going to get out and I'm going to have a job lined up. I'm going to be ready to go. I'm going to be mentally prepared to make this transition. I'm going to settle back into, somewhat of probably what, life was like before I ever went in. And then you walk out the door with the certificate that says, essentially, thanks for your service. And you realize, whoa, what's next?
Yeah.
And even though those things are in place, now it's a process of figuring out, well, what does all that look like in this new environment where you're concerned about a lot of things that you just really weren't before? Because in the military, they do it's a very defined track for the most part. And when you sit in a certain position and you look at what's going to be next over the course of the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you really understand there's a choice of 2 or 3 jobs that you're going to have. And then you get out and you say, I can do anything I want.
Right.
And when you come from an environment where you had been asked to do so many different things, the thought process in that default position is always, well, I can do anything that anybody asks me to do. I just need someone to tell me what they want me to do, and I'll figure it out. And as you go through the process of discussing what that looks like, you realize that you have to be much more focused. You have to understand where you want to be and what you want to do, because people genuinely want to help you, but they can't help you if you look at them and say, oh, just tell me what you need and I'll figure out how to do it.
Right, and you probably also need to be a little humbled, because you know people are going to help you, but you're also, wherever you step into, and you are a financial advisor in Red Bank, New Jersey. You're starting over again. You're starting at the bottom. I know you're probably taking a lot of tests right now, so your brain's probably a little fried. But you're making your way, and you're now building a life and a business outside of the Army, and people are there to help you. And I think it's again, I definitely know you're going to succeed, because of all your training and about the fact, and what I've seen in you today and when I met you before, is leadership and commitment. And so I can't imagine anything in your future is going to be a failure. So I think that, I wish you the best of luck, and I need to make sure, we have a big birthday on Friday for a 7-year-old,
We do. So I thank you for having me. I really appreciate
you being
it.
here,
It's been a great conversation. And on Friday is my daughter Lily's 7th birthday. So I just want to wish you a happy birthday, Lily.
Yeah. And ironically, it happens to be Veterans Day.
It does.
And I know I tried to get you on Veterans Day, but you have other engagements in New York City. So I am quite certain, because you are a great speaker, you are a great leader. And again, I thank you for your service. And I think I'm sure there'll be a big birthday celebration on Friday for Lily.
There is. We've been planning it for about, almost a year.
Almost a year. There you go. Lily asked for a big gift. So, Fran, again, I appreciate you being here. Again, thanks for your service. Thanks for all you've done for our country, and best of luck to you in your life.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We'll be back in a moment.
Rush Limbaugh today at noon. More Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin coming up next. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.